and I'm just gonna ask people in the chat, make sure they can hear us and stuff before we get going, but we should be good. Alright. Hello everyone, if you can see us and hear us at the moment, please let us know. We're just going to make sure everything's working properly before we get fully into this lovely stream with a very special guest star and the writer of Action Comics as well, but this is the guest star of the channel. But yeah, just let us know if everything's okay, and then we can jump right into this.
I'm having a problem with my live stream, so hang on a second. Let me scooch out, try to fix it quick.
No problem. But if for folks joining us who are new to the channel or haven't been familiar, because we did a previous interview with the very talented, incredible Philip Kennedy Johnson, who's joining us now. You, sir, would you mind introducing yourself to the audience?
Hey everybody, Philip Kennedy Johnson, writer of Action Comics, Alien 007, and various other things. Good friend of Alfie. Glad to be meeting Aaron finally, and yeah, glad to be back on here. Please forgive the environment. I'm currently on tour, and I'm in a hotel room, so sorry the lighting's not quite what you would expect. Action Comics.
Okay. Is everything in the chat looking good? That
yep,
they can hear?
I can see it. People can hear us. I think. Can you hear it? Can you hear him? And you can hear me, and you can hear PKJ. So we should be good, I think.
All right, awesome. If we're all good to get started, then I had a very specific.
Oh, hang on a second. Ian says PKJ is really quiet, and you're really loud.
Okay.
So just adjust the volume quick.
No problem.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
You're totally fine. It's always good to get this thing sorted before we start. Ba. And then where is desktop audio? Is for over here. Alright, that should be fixed now. We'll just talk for a little bit just to make sure everything's okay, but yeah, we're just going to have a general Superman chat here. We're going to be just talking about the character, our approaches to the character, preferences of the character, highlights of stories, and in general, I think a very key thing is...
Hey, Alfie, I'm sorry, I can't hear anything you're saying.
Oh my god! Let me check on Discord.
Can people in the chat hear you?
Voice and video. Hello. Okay.
I heard you for like a split second there.
Okay.
Ooh, that was loud.
It's down very loud. Can you hear us now?
There we go.
Okay. Awesome. As I was saying... Totally professional. This is why I get invited to these things. We're going to be doing a general Superman talk. You're fine. About the character and basically our approaches to writing the character, and I think a very important thing where this kind of period in the character's history is kind of looking to like the next decade of Superman. Like, we've seen so many different versions of him, and like very recently the 2010s I think have been about reinventing Superman and like a bunch of different takes and people trying to figure him out. I think the 2020s is where we're going to really start seeing things like solidify and start seeing like a new take of the character going forward, onward for the next couple of decades. So a lot of my questions are basically going to be about the idea of like where we're going to take Superman forward, what new things can be applied to the character, rather than trying to fix or readjust what's come before. Like, what can we show people that hasn't been seen before? And I think you're going to be focusing mainly on a certain bald-headed arch enemy of Superman and maybe where we can take him in the future of certain things. And then after we've had a little conversation with PKJ, just asking his questions and his answering our questions and stuff like that, say about 40 minutes into this, and if that it's going to be a more of a looser structure, so don't take that as gospel, but I'm just keeping that in my mind. Then we'll begin going open to the floor, just answering your questions either in the YouTube live chat or on Twitter. So if you want to answer questions now, you can send them, and if one's like really burning or a super chat, we might try and squeeze it in, but I do want to make sure that we can have a more of a one-on-one conversation just to open, just so things stay focused and direct at first, and then we can kind of open up the floodgates to the chaos of the internet, if that sounds good to everyone.
I encourage any questions. I'd love to talk to you guys after. I want to know what you think. I want to know what you are curious about, or give me your demands. The way I typically get them on Twitter. I'll hear it all.
All right. Is everything looking good for the chat then?
Yep, chat seems like they're good to go, so.
Thank goodness, because I was getting really embarrassing if that was going to keep going wrong for me.
Yeah, I'm sorry about the audio issues.
No, it's totally fine. It's all on my end. It's good to sort out. All right. So first thing I want to open with is last time we chat, on camera at least, you were just starting the Warworld saga, and now it's been long enough where you've just finished the Warworld saga. Now that it's all said and done, for people who haven't read your run yet and you've got it all completed, what would be your pitch for people to check out that story? What were you trying to do with Superman, with that whole saga?
I had a handful of like mission statements that I wanted to get across. The whole thing with him not being up to his usual power level is not something that I insisted on. It was just sort of what made sense for the story. It was really about getting to the core of who Superman is. Like what makes him Superman, like what powers set aside, all the amazing physical things he can do. Take all that out of the equation, and who is he? And that's what I wanted to see. And I also wanted to see him in an environment we don't usually see him in. I wanted to do something where it's not just moving the same pieces around Metropolis. I wanted to take him out of his comfort zone, give him a new cast for a bit, and see what happens. And I wanted to see also. I mean, there was a very personal mission that I wanted to give him. I've spoken before online about my passion for anti-human trafficking work, and how frustrating that work can be. You want it to be simple, you just want to, go out there and find someone who needs help them. They're grateful to see you. Everything's good. You did it, like you want it to be easy. And it's not easy. It's very complicated, and it's very hard. And very often the people that you want to help don't want your help. They don't want to know you. You're not welcome. And I wanted to know what Superman would do with a problem like that. Like I needed to see for myself, like how Superman would handle a problem like that. So that was at the core, what the story was. But I also wanted to take a Superman villain, like one of the primary rogues from his rogues gallery, and make him more complicated. Take somebody that should be really scary and powerful, that is sometimes portrayed a little bit one note, and make him really complicated, give him a backstory, show why he is the way he is, and why he wants what he wants, and what he wants specifically. What makes him different from the other big muscly aliens. Like there's all these guys who kind of look the same and sometimes get mistaken for each other, or just kind of blown off as like, oh yeah, he's the guy like Mongol, or he's the guy like Darkseid, or Thanos, or whatever. They're different, and they should be portrayed extremely differently. And so I wanted to show Mongol as this intergalactic slaver, that sets him apart, where he's formed this cult of slavery. It's very different from Thanos, very different from Darkseid. So yeah, basically, so I'm getting too complicated here. So see Superman at his core, down to his bones. So who is he? To take one of his big villains and make them way cooler, more interesting. And that kind of applies to Warworld as well. Make Warworld a much more, interesting, more complicated setting. And 3, make more direct ties between the current continuity DCU and the Old Testament of the DCU, which is, to me, the fourth one. I want to see the Kirbyverse tied much more directly to the current continuity characters, and make it all feel like one thing, And I couldn't say that right up front because it would have been a big spoiler. So because I completely changed what Warworld is and where it came from and all that. There's a whole new origin for Warworld now, and it's not just a big metal ball that somebody made. There's more to it. It's a piece of an old god, of a first world god. It's one of his aspects that made him what he was, and the world grew out of it, and now it just means more than it did. And we know more about the people who live there, and now it's tied to the origins of what the DC universe is. So it's not just I wanted a story that was not just required reading for Superman as a character, but also for the DCU at large. Something like if you want to understand the DCU, you've got to understand Warworld Saga because it ties. It's going to be one of many pieces that I hope to contribute to that tie the DC universe together and just make it a much bigger, crazier, newer, but also older, just richer place.
I mean, that's a pretty good pitch. I want it. I'm here for that. Okay, so again, folks, the best thing you can do outside of sounding it from the man of the words of the man himself is go read the story now. It's all finished. You can read the whole saga all on its own, either digitally or I believe the trades are, one big trade is still going to come out, but all the little trades are, I think, all out at this point.
Actually, no. I think Warworld Revolution is yet to come out.
Oh, okay.
So it's Warworld Rising and the Arena are both out, and there's going to be World Revolution as well that contains the rest of it all the way through the end. And then after that, there will be almost certainly there will be a Warworld collection, a Warworld Saga collection.
Well, there we go then. All right. So speaking of, because I know you're kind of, I could talk about Cosmic DC. She's like, okay, DC comics, whatever. But if we want to talk about one certain Superman bad guy specifically that maybe can get depthed out and stuff, after we finish the Warworld saga and Superman comes back to Earth in issue post Warworld, like the special and the end thing, we see a certain character whose reaction to Superman's big sweeping changes of bringing these refugees to Earth, Superman's ultimate nemesis, Lex Luthor. The floor is yours to talk about Lex Luthor.
I was really happy to see that you bring Lex in, because either one of two things happens with Lex. Either he gets shoved in somewhere like Gotham where he doesn't belong, and it makes me really mad because I want to see him. He is a Superman villain. Do not waste him on Bruce Wayne. I want to see it with Superman. Or you get this really kind of crappy, watered-down Lex that doesn't really feel like Lex at all. So it was really nice to see a Lex that is very sure of himself, and the tone for Lex was actually really refreshing, because there's one thing specifically that, as I was reading some of your Lex pieces in your book, you end a lot of his sentences with one word adjectives or adverbs. Like you end his statement he's on I'm trying to think of an example. He has a dialogue or a monologue, and then he kind of ends with a closer word that a lot of people forget that is how he talks. They kind of give him these, I don't know, more kind of layman way of speaking that just isn't Lex at all. And I was happy to see the kind of more soliloquy Lex come back and give his spiel. So I really enjoyed that you brought him in, and you brought him into the usual tone and the usual that he deserves. So thanks for bringing my boy back and doing him justice. I was happy to see that.
I appreciate that. I'm kind of a dialogue snob. I really want everyone to have their own voice.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a pretty clear picture of who Lex is. It's like he I mean, confidence for sure. Just this commanding intelligence. And sometimes that comes across, that should come across in this dialogue for sure. It's kind of this line between confidence and intelligence and sometimes aggression, depending on where, just not letting you forget that he's still in charge. In every conversation, it's all you have to do, here's all these things I can do for you. All you have to do is whatever the fuck I tell you to do. He's making it very clear, yes, we're friends. You need my help. We can help each other. Just don't forget who's in charge. Kind of worked in there towards the end.
The "you still work for me" condescension. Really yeah, I like that.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, you really have to have that in there. And I can't wait for you to see what's coming. I can't wait for you to see how that whole thing ends between him and he's when he leaves the cell, and he's like, I see, this is about your sister. It must really be nice for you to have her. Take care of her. And then he leaves, and then later she's supposed to be visiting and she's not there. And you just see him, and you see him in the cell by himself. And it's what happened? Is she just not here, or did Lex do something? And he's like, oh my god, I forgot who I was talking to. I'm talking to Lex Luthor, and of course, he's still in charge, even though I said no, he's still in charge. He just knows what buttons to push, and I cannot wait for you to see where that goes. I know that Josh has big plans for Lex in the Superman book as well. So I'm trying not to overuse Lex. Like I really like Lex as the guy behind the curtain,
Hmm.
like pulling strings. Like he sees Metropolis as his city, and that Superman is there at all is just an affront to him. He's like, "This is my city. Like, you see that building? That's my building. It's my name on it. You know, like the city's got my name on it, and you're not even human." He just hates it, and he's the one making all these different pieces work. So yeah, I just wanted to see Lex as like the guy behind the curtain, kind of setting up the pieces for all the books to come. So hope you continue to enjoy it.
Yeah, it was definitely nice to see. I see so many bad Lex takes, so I'm like, oh, this was pretty good. I like this so far. So I perked up when I saw my boy repped properly, because I'm not like a comic snob about most things. I get really elitist about the X-Men and Lex Luthor, and that's it. Like everything else, I'm pretty like, oh yeah, I'll enjoy whatever. But those are the two things I get on my high horse about is X-Men and that. So I am.
Cool. It means a lot to me that you approve. Then I definitely still have plans for Lex going forward. I'm gonna try not to oversaturate the line with Lex Luthor, but he still has a very important role to play going forward in action. And glad I have your approval, especially since it sounds like he's a big deal to you.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because I DC because of this one.
I lost audio again.
Oh, okay. Can you fix the audio?
Yeah, no problem.
1 minute.
I heard a flip.
There
Do, 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 do,
we
do, do.
go. There we go.
Apologies, folks. All right, should be fine now.
It's probably
There
my
you
crappy headphones that are really shitty, but that's probably what it is.
Weird door. It's a quick fix.
Yeah.
So you were saying about like you got into DC.
Yeah, I was a DC fan originally, then moved to Marvel, then back to DC again because of you. And the thing that I like most about Superman in general is Lex and kind of the supporting cast that make Clark shine kind of more as who he is. I feel like the surrounding villains, the planet, Lois, family, they all kind of amplify Clark and make Clark inherently more interesting when you have a good parallel with other characters. And I feel like Lex is a really good cornerstone of you build Clark through a good Lex as well. You get a lot of good characterization for Clark through Lex and through people around him. So I like to see, again, you don't want to overuse him too. It can definitely get a little bit too much back and forth sometimes, but I think that he's a really good way to flesh Clark out into a more interesting character, because I know a common complaint is, well, Superman's boring, is a very common complaint you get in the community. And there are some really bad depictions of Superman too in other media, so it's nice to have some enhancement for Clark through other characters that way. So,
And that's something I think with PKJ you talked about with like Mongol, like making him a more interesting villain. The next one is kind of seems to be tackling is going to be Mataro. Do you agree with that? Do you think Clark does shine better when you have these opposing forces, like you said, that aren't one note, that you can have those be not overshadowing Superman because he's still the guy you're buying the book for, but like complementary to him? Or do you have like a different opinion on that?
Yeah, I see. I mean, all of his best villains, in my opinion, are like a dark mirror to him. Either they're just like him but twisted, or they're his complete antithesis. Like just the diametrically opposed force. And for Mongol, he's the if Superman is the champion of the oppressed, as he should be, then a slaver would be his opposite. Right, like and that's what Mongol is. He's a slaver. He's a this cult of personality slaver that just dominates this planet that has known nothing but war for centuries. But then also that planet dominates others, and he's the opposite of what Superman is. Lex Luthor is Superman's opposite in a very different way, where he asserts control over the city, and then Superman goes there just to just to help everyone. Like where Lex went there to rule. You know, like he found the greatest city in the world, and like now he rules it like his kingdom. And you know, it could have been a force for you know the greatest force for good that we have here until you know until he was usurped, and now like all he can think about is like, he's just a creature of ego, like pure ego. So he's Superman's opposite in that way. Darkseid is like this dark god. This is something that Grant Morrison and I actually talked about when I saw him in person. Finally, we talked about Darkseid a little bit, and no, I completely agree. I don't like seeing Superman get in fistfights, or anyone really, with Darkseid. He's not the kind of guy you should be fist fighting. He's a force of nature. He's like it would be like, God, I don't even know. I can't think of a good
Like
parallel, but
Lovecraftian, like just force. Like you can't even. It's like trying to punch the
Yeah.
ocean.
Exactly, yeah. Like yeah, it's just it shouldn't make sense that you get in a fist fight with Darkseid. Um, it's just a different kind of thing. He's like this unknowable strength. Um, so yeah, they're all different. They just they're all those guys are his opposite in different ways. And Metallo is an interesting way. He's about to be, I can't spoil anything. And, I have this backstory for Metallo that I really want to show, where he's just this blue collar guy who was just turned into this other thing almost against his will, and now he's got this crazy power level. He's just like he's lost everything. He's not human anymore. He's lost his body. He doesn't have any connections to anything. He was just this. He was at one time, you know, a good kid who, you know, this. So imagine Metallo the way I see him. He's a good kid. His dad's a criminal. He comes home like with this guy that's hurt and throws him the gun. He's like, here, get rid of this. And he sees this gun and he's just fascinated by it. And for the rest of his life, step by step, he just becomes the gun. And eventually he's a guy who had this one path, and then through this accident, his other path emerges, and he just has this gun in his head and he can't get it out of his head, and then he just becomes the gun step by step. And now he's this living gun that he can't be anything else. It's just this power that just overtook his life, and he's angry about it, and he's angry and sad. He has this sister that needs him, and he's just more complicated. He's not just a guy in a cool looking Terminator body. There's a person in there, and he has reasons for doing what he's doing. And I wanted to show all that. I wanted to give us a villain that we not only love to see fighting Superman because he looks cool, but also kind of feel bad for him in a way. Like we still want Superman to do what to win. We want to see an
The hotel Wi-Fi's kicking in.
know, you want to situation. The guy that he's the Superman, but he's yeah. Can you hear me now?
There we are. I was gonna say, for like a big section there is like your hotel Wi-Fi like cut you out. From when you were just talking about Metallo being the no, it's okay. It was I was bound to happen at some point with it. The thing I want to kind of focus on, because it was really interesting, you brought up Metallo as like the idea of the gun, right? Superman famously stops guns, stops bullets. That's kind of his thing. But what I think is interesting is if you have that idea of the bullet, right, with Superman, he's sent to Earth as a rocket, and I know Morrison in his run, they showed like the idea of the rocket being like a bullet shot, like the speeding bullet is Superman. That's kind of like the whole of the story and stuff like that. Is that kind of where you're going for the angle of Metallo? Is like if Superman is that constant like forward motion, like he is the idea of that as a force for good. He is the idea of like strength used in protection for others. Is Metallo gonna then be like, say, that, like you said, like the antithesis of that, be like the idea of like this is just the cold hard power machinery vibe? Or am I just misreading it from your saying?
Well, I guess for me in DC mythology, even more so than Marvel, the gun is the representation of like destruction and evil almost. The gun is the thing that Batman won't touch, the thing that Superman, like you're Superman to the oppressed, he'll jumps in the way of the bullets all the time. The gun is kind of this symbolic thing that Superman's constantly fighting. And that we even saw that kind of come together with Steel's origin as well, where he was an arms manufacturer, a guy that arms designer, like he designed these guns, and then like
No, the Wi-Fi.
Yeah, cut out again. I'm sorry.
the of the that he had made. I see the enemy side. Some conversation. Can you hear me?
We can hear you now. Again, it was just for a swath there. It went away. We didn't get much of that insight, which is really annoying. But I think the chat, it might be actually easier on the live streams end to pick you up than for us.
Okay, well, I hope so.
Yeah.
It's just talking about. I just talked about the representation of the gun as kind of the ever-present evil that Superman's always fighting.
No, I think that makes perfect sense. And for a take on Metallo, that's something different. No one has really used for that character before. A lot of other people just get focused on very much, like you said, like the Terminator iconography, or making him just like a guy in a metal suit. Like, I don't think I had a take on Metallo where I excitedly ran into the kitchen and screamed, "I figured him out! I figured out the character!" But it's a bit different from yours. So I always find it interesting when we revamp these villains. Everyone's got like such a different idea of where to take them, and I think that's really healthy for the world of Superman. Where he is always, I think, when portrayed properly, very true, very kind of like, what is the most good thing you can imagine, and that's what Superman would say. But would you agree that his villains are maybe a little bit more up to interpretation, where you can really do more wilder takes with the villains as like one-offs, just to kind of see where they go? Like, we like Lex Luthor a very specific certain way, but like someone like Livewire, I think you can throw in there. Someone like Zod is more open for interpretation. Like, do you think the villains are maybe where you can go for Superman with these like wilder swings?
Yeah, I think I think that with companies like DC and Marvel, there's always an element of like protecting the brand, protecting the characters, and all that. The heroes are always going to be a little more sacrosanct than the villains, unless you get somebody really truly enormous like the Joker or whatever. But even then, like there is a little bit more leeway. Sometimes I get asked if I have to read like every word of a character that's been written to make sure it all fits the same. It should all be the same voice, the same character, and everything the whole way through. And there actually is not that kind of pressure, because they, when they hire a new creative team, they want that version of the thing. They're not hiring me to do a Mark Waid impression, or or whoever, any particular writer that we've had. They want our actual voice. Plus, who would sign up for that anyway? Like, we want to put our own voice. I have a very clear voice for Superman in mind, and that's the voice I want to put on the page. And the same with Lex, like, and all the others. Like, they're not making me beholden to every other writer that's ever come. So there is definitely a little bit more leeway with villains.
I think Superman villains in general too, as opposed to like Batman villains or Wonder Woman villains or other DC heroes and villain categories. I think Superman kind of has a gallery that's more flexible that way than a lot of other heroes do in DC, especially. I feel like his are way more open to reinvention than I would say like 70% of the rest of DC, quite honestly, because it's just, there's so much unused and so much it's like base level used, where it's only used one specific way, like once every so often, so you have some more freedom, I would say. with Superman by comparison.
Yeah, whenever I see a villain used in a kind of a one-dimensional way, like, haha, oh, I finally have you, Superman. What, it's like some random cackly, like, I'm evil just 'cause kind of approach. It's almost like I feel like I'm almost like writing in my journal, like, here's another one I really want to fix because that just bothers me. I don't like to see somebody that doesn't have any kind of motivation or anything. They're just like, hey, I'm just evil. Like that bothers me. I want to know who they are, what they want. If they just want to destroy the world, I guess I don't give a shit. I want to know what they want and why, what they're afraid of, why they're so angry or whatever. Make us care. It's not just it's not enough to just have the spectacle. There has to be reasons for stuff.
Well, I think Supes in general isn't just going to go for the big punch, usually, anyway. He's going to try to talk to them to reason it out, to try to figure something out that's not just... I mean, you have exceptions, like Doomsday. Obviously, you can't reason with Doomsday. That's not going to happen. But I think a lot of villains, he always has a dialogue with, by comparison. He doesn't just come in and just punch them out and then leave. He usually tries to level with them on some wavelength by comparison to other heroes, I think, too.
Yeah. Yeah, there was I think it was Brian Edward Hill, like some writer. I think it was Brian. He said, by the end of every scene of dialogue or action, there has to be like he has to decide how does this move the character's arc forward. Like what happened? Like how does this fight scene affect the character's worldview or the character's like emotional arc or whatever. Like it's not enough to just like now we have a fight and somebody wins. There has to be some kind of that has to affect the arc the way that conversation would. And I thought that was looking at it.
Okay, we were waiting for the video to catch up with you, but we actually had all of that, so that's fine. Something I want to talk about then, because we're kind of on like the topic of villains, and it's another one I think you have opinions on. Now, I'm going to preface this. If you can't say anything, because this character hasn't appeared in your run yet, and I don't think they're in the solicits for anything coming up recently, but just feel free to just say, no, Alfie, I'm very sorry, I can't talk about that right now, knowing smile. But a lot of your recent mission statement with the post-Action 1050 Superman books is going to be focusing on the Superman family. You're going to have Kara involved, you're going to have Keenan, you're going to have Connor, you're going to have John, like all of these characters, and then the new twins that they brought home from Warworld, focusing on the larger cast of Superman and the superpower people and Natasha Irons and Steel and so forth. There is one kind of family member of Superman, but not quite family member of Superman, that I'm very interested to see what your opinion is on, and that would be the uncle we don't invite to the Christmas party, General Zod. Like, what are your thoughts on that character for Superman as a villain?
We have had a lot of conversations about Zod, and I want to use him in some way. I'm trying to figure out how exactly, but it would. So in the Warworld saga, we introduced the Philosians, who were like an offshoot species that were once Kryptonians, left Krypton thousands of years ago, and now, they evolved in different solar systems, so they're somewhat different now. It would be we also introduced the ties with the gods of the first world of the Kirbyverse, and all of that is still going somewhere. Like if they let me do my crazy long Dan Jurgens run on Superman, which I would do terrible things for, I really would love to do that. It's all going to go towards this big thing that I'm building to, and it would not make any sense to have that story without Zod playing in a super important role. So yeah, I would love to deal with Zod. Zod is one of the coolest Superman villains ever. And talk about like the obvious opposite of Superman. He's actually Kryptonian. I mean, Jesus. But as far as the kinship that he would feel with the Phalosians, like knowing there's this whole race, because he knows all about the Phalosians. Like he grew up on Krypton, as Kara did, but like actually he was like of age there. He knows his history. He knows about the Phalosians, or at least knows about the mystery that is the Phalosians, like where they might have gone. It would be this. He would be gobsmacked to know that they've been discovered and they've been found on Warworld and they're out there. Like he would just have to see them and know them. You know, it's he would be like super devoted to them in a way. So yeah, that's definitely something that if they give me the runway, we're definitely going to see Zod interact with the Phalosians, and he's going to play an important role in what's to come.
Now you have very and we've had like a whole thing about Zod, but I think something important then, if he's someone that I haven't even quite gotten to yet, you got very specific like what you don't like to see with Zod and what hasn't been done yet. Do you wanna get into that?
I think maybe another time's conversation. That's a long conversation, but I will drone on for too long about that. We'll come back to that once we see how things develop. We'll put a pin in that and we'll come back to that conversation.
Okay.
I think just in general, Zod's either just done in very, very one-note, angry Kryptonian, war bro kind of way that isn't a great reflection of who he would actually probably be. So I think that's something that we can shelve for later, because I know you want to get to open up questions to everybody else too. So I will dominate the conversation if we talk about Zod too long. So we'll skip that for now and go into something else. But we'll come back to that at some point in time.
All right.
I'll give you notes for next time.
Thank you. I'll say my question about it then, and maybe this can be a good one before we can get into the fight scene thing we talked about last time we were here, in case like the audience wants to talk about it, and then we can open it to questions. But my one thing I want to do before we skip from Zod completely is, you tell me if you agree with this, but one thing I don't like about depictions of Zod is we have this great backstory with him and Jor-El and this kinship that they have, this friendship. And we imply that Zod was like this really multifaceted character, and like he was friends with Superman's father, and it's a lad. And then when he comes to Earth, he's just dictator, I'm evil, Kal-El, and I don't like you if you got it. Do you have any thoughts about like what to do with that, specifically like that, how to solve that problem from? There seems like there's two different Zods out there. Like there's the past Zod who was complex, and now there's the current Zod who's just, I'm a bad guy.
Well, he was portrayed a little more, maybe not complicated, but like in the Bendis run, they were sometimes allies, and before that also, when he was set up with his family in another world and everything, like he's seen them since, he's seen Zod since then, and they're not exactly like, they're not like bro hugging or anything, but they're okay right now. So I definitely want to see him seen. I mean, God.
I'm going to say you've cut out for this point here when you said God, which is like the perfect. It's like, no.
The stream's still running though, so I think it's coming through on stream. Okay, it's just us.
Okay.
Sorry, can you hear me?
No, yeah, you just. I think the streamer had that though, but we just on our end we didn't.
Yeah, I just paused for us. I think the stream got it. It was still running.
Okay, that's fine.
I think.
I guess then.
I didn't have any great insights to it. I just want to. I think that it would not be too hard to make him more complicated, and there have been some takes on that kind of do that already. But I have feelings about Zod that I should keep to myself, because hopefully I'll get to actually do them on the page before too long.
We can do a follow-up one at that, hopefully, by the time you've got the chance to do that. Hopefully, fingers crossed for you. Alright, final thing from my thing is, for people who watch this YouTube channel, we do a lot of fight scenes with stuff like Dragon Ball and stuff, and last chance I got to meet PKJ in person, we got to talk about like the difference between manga fight scenes and comic book fight scenes, and how Superman, who has such an expansive power set, he's got super speed, he's got super strength, he's got these heightened senses, he can shoot lasers from his eyes, but he can also freeze people, he can move in certain ways that other characters just can't physically on the page, and how traditionally that hasn't been served on the page in the same way, where like someone like Spider-Man, very visual medium with his fight scenes, has been able to express that in a very unique visual language. You know a Spider-Man story by how he moves, how he poses. Superman, however, we get a good distinction of like how he should kind of pose and talk, but how he fights is often done in a very big punch, big knockout blow, and there's not a lot of nuance there. There's not a lot of, in terms of the manga layouts, where you'd have the build up to the blow, a shot of like the anticipation of the hit, and then the hit itself.
Oh no, I lost your audio again. Come back. Oh, I got a blip.
Oh, hello, no.
Come on.
Okay, finally. Yeah, I was getting too excited talking about that. That's my fight scene composition, is blowing out the mic. But I was just saying the idea, like, since we last talked about that, and like the difference between manga comic books and the Japanese and Western comic books, I think is a better way of describing that, and applying that to Superman. What have you been your thoughts since that previous conversation there?
I've been very slowly plodding my way through some manga and trying to educate myself a little bit on how it's done. I mean, I have passing knowledge of anime and how those fights tend to go, and how massive and explosive they tend to get, and speed lines everywhere, and like the crazy like super speed slash slow mo thing where somebody's coming at you and screaming and there's speed lines everywhere. I have been trying to see how that applies to still sequential imagery of manga, and it's been helpful. I don't want to, like, I'm trying not to micromanage my artists, but I have when I'm laying stuff out, I'm trying to allow for more space, basically, in the fights, the way that they do in manga, like how like the same moment can take up more real estate on the page. Kind of one of the lines that we talked about were just like adding these little adding panels between moments of impact. But also, like, the thing that really struck me about that conversation was not just the specifics of the panel layout. It's also just thinking about Superman fights more in terms of what can I do besides punch this, because he's got this crazy power set at his disposal. So here are all the tools at our disposal. How can we combine them in interesting ways? How can we use like, we know that he can fly, but he flies by creating this biomagnetic field around himself. Can he, we've seen him every now and again extend that to other things around himself. Like, how can we use that in a fighty way? That's really cool. In old comic books, sometimes we see Superman just flying super fast and breaking barriers and going back in time, decades. We just see these rings that say 1970, 1960, 1950, and he's just going through it like it's nothing. How do we use that in a fight scene? Because now he's got that kind of power set again. Like, following the whole thing with the White Sun on Warworld, he's got like crazy power level, more like we saw in All-Star, and even more so. So I'm just trying to think of all the different things he can do where he just has, honestly, like, no limitations. And how do we put together a really interesting fight that way that's not just trading shots to the chin?
Yeah, that sounds really, really exciting. I'm so pumped to get a taste of that as we go through the rest of your run. Again, really inspiring to see that finally get applied to the character. All right, I think it's about time we open things out to the audience. From what you're seeing on the chat, just let everyone know that we're going to be taking questions now. If there's anything interesting that stands out to you in there already, if not, I can pick some of the ones that we've already got waiting for us on Twitter that have been asked.
I don't have, like, forgive my ignorance. I am not on Discord ever. How do I open up the chat on here? All I see is you guys.
Yeah, we're just gonna get them out and read them out, so you'll be fine. So don't worry about that.
Okay. All right, cool.
No
Right,
problem.
Here's one you might want to ask.
Okay.
That one right there.
How old is Fowler?
Thelma, in my headcanon, she is right about 18.
Okay.
Like yeah. I mean, I never like expressly said how old she is, but she was meant to be characterized as a very young woman, but no longer a child. So in my headcanon, she's right about 18. If future books, define her as being, anywhere from 16 to 24, that would all be plausible.
Okay.
We got one from Ian here. Who is a supporting character for Superman you want to feature in a story? That you can talk about.
Well, I mean, we're about to see the whole... Yeah. I mean, we're about to see the whole... okay. I had a lot of these old 80-page giants from the old days I really liked, where it was like a series of... Like, those were proper anthologies, where there would be these one-off stories. By the time you're done with the comic, you've read several different stories of different characters. Like you might see, like in a Batman family book, you might see a team up with Dick Grayson and Batgirl, and then the next story would be about Batman. The next one would be about, Alfred and Robin or whatever. Mm-hmm. Those stories were really fun, and that's kind of what we're doing now. But it's not. I think it was kind of what I said. Has been misunderstood. Like, it's not really that kind of a book. There are 3 series going on in the Pages of Action. There's the 20-page lead story, like the ones I've been doing. That's going to continue. And then 2 10-page backups. And those are also series that will continue. So it's the through line of the lead story, and there's a through line of the backups. So not truly an anthology. And Clark is still going to be very much the focus of the lead story. So I want everyone to understand that. Clark's not going to be getting equal page time with Supergirl, with Lois and everyone else. It's still very much a Clark book. But as far as the characters that I want to see featured in the story, man, they're all going to be getting so much heat. I want to see, I really like writing Connor.
Oh, Warp's gonna love that. We have a friend who's a huge Connor fan.
Cool shit, and I love Connor. He seems different than the others. Like they're all different. Every one of them, it really is unique. And I saw a mutual friend of ours, Alfie Adam, who's a huge, like one of the biggest Superman fans around, talked about how he prefers the Daily Planet cast to like the Super Family. And I took umbrage at that because I feel like everyone kind of lumps the whole super family together, like they're all just, they're all kind of the same. And Adam didn't say that, but I feel like that kind of represents how they're seen. Like we've got Superman's son John, who's like Superman. We got Kara, who's like Superman except a girl with blonde hair, and we got kids who are gonna be like Superman but tiny, and that's not the case. They're all different. So. I'm really looking forward to making it a little more clear. And again, kind of like I tried to make Warworld Saga required reading for who Superman is at his core, required reading for what Warworld is, for who Mongol is, and all that. I kind of want this Action Comics run that we've just started to be required reading for anyone who writes any of these characters ever again. I want to show who Connor is, like what his motivations are, why he's different, like what he wants, what he's afraid of, who he's into or whatever, like all these little character things that matter about him specifically. Same thing for Kara, same thing for the twins, same thing for everybody in that family. I want to show who everybody is. It's kind of a big cast for that, and it is a challenge to give everyone enough pages to really to give them all a character arc, like an emotional arc. But that's what we're doing. I mean, Clark is still very much the middle of that character of the book, but everyone's getting their own space. I know that's not really what that person asked, but I really like writing Connor, and like if after my Superman writing days are done, I would love to do a Connor book too.
Oh, that's really cool. And a question that I have from someone on Twitter who's very similar to the topic of the previous question is, how do you go about writing Superman in his interactions with the family when he's not in a mentorship role? And to elaborate on that, what he was asking is, every time we see Superman interact with like Kara or Connor, he's always kind of like a teacher role. If you were going to write Superman in a situation where he wasn't teaching them, like what kind of things do you consider for that to show them more as like a family outside of like that mentor-student dynamic?
The way that I see in my mind, at least, the way he views Kara is not as a mentor. I don't think he talks to Kara like a mentor. I mean, we've seen him do that in the comics a million times, but I think it makes more sense for him to look to Kara in a way for wisdom, because Kara is the most Kryptonian of any of them. She grew up on Krypton. She knows so much more than he does. He has come to learn a great deal about Krypton throughout his life, but Kara lived it, and I think he's got this unusual relationship with Kara because she is younger than him, sorta, but she's also older and wiser in a way. And she has life experience that he never had, that no one living ever had except Zod. So yeah, I think he sees Kara as a true peer and as an elder in some ways. So I think he kind of shows Kara this deferential respect, or that he should, and that he's gonna in my book. To Connor, I want him to. I mean, it is kind of a mentorship kind of role with Connor, but it's also more like reassuring him that he's part of the family, even though he's kind of not. I mean, he's a clone of Clark and someone else, and he is sort of an outsider, but Clark goes to great pains to make sure he doesn't feel that way, or he tries to be mindful of it, you know. For me, going forward, I'm putting myself in Superman's shoes. When he speaks to John, he sees John with such love, but there was also going to be this tiny, tiny hint of sadness at the years that he lost with him, and that piece that is now missing from his relationship with John, it kind of shows how he dotes on the twins, because the twins now represent that time that he lost with his own son, and so he gets a huge amount of he gets such a rewarding like fatherly feeling from showing the kids Earth and helping them get past their trauma from Warworld, and he dotes on the twins now, because they represent that time that he has always lost with John, he'll never have again. So yeah, I think his relationship with the twins and with John is kind of the symbiotic, not that's the wrong word, but like what he lost with John, he has gained with the kids, and I don't know. I just think his relationship with John and the kids really kind of feed off each other and inform each other a lot.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Anything else from the chat?
Just building on that, actually, someone asked about Chris, his first son,
Yeah,
technically.
the adopted from the...
Yeah, someone just asked about, is
Chris.
anybody going to touch Chris anytime in the near future? Someone asked in the chat about that, so it kind of builds on the family dynamic.
I hope so. The Chris thing is complicated because the event of the Chris Kent thing happened before the whole reverse reset, I think, and there some of that has been undone to a degree as far as continuity. Honestly, I have not decided how to handle it when Superman and Chris finally meet again. Because first of all, his name's not Chris now; he's Zod's son through and through. But it doesn't mean he's like evil. Like I see Chris Kent, forgive me, I forget his Kryptonian name, but I I still see him very much as the kind of kid that he was before. But the whole issue of, is he still Chris Kent, or is he just purely Zod's son now?
I at this point in the
It's a little more
Bendis,
complicated
yeah,
because of the continuity changes.
after the Bendis run, from last thing I remember, he was fully Zod's son because the Chris Kent thing was resolved and New 52 wiped that off the board, and then once we got back to Rebirth, they didn't even touch it again. So it is very one of those like
Right.
early 2000s decisions that's basically been completely changed. So I think at this point, if you were to reintroduce Chris Kent, you'd be basically just making a new version of that character from scratch.
Yeah, that's kind of how I saw it, and I've been hesitant to touch it so far. Well, it hasn't been neat anyway, because there hasn't really been an organic way to work in Zod just yet because of the other things that we're doing first. I didn't want to. I mean, if we wanted to, we could have dealt with the Zod family in the aftermath of Warworld, but I don't want to keep this war. I don't want to have my entire run be nothing but Warworld. I wanted to kind of give Warworld a rest and deal more with the Metropolis cast. Look at a new member of the Rogues Gallery. Not new, Metal's not new, but like a different character that has nothing to do with the Warworld stuff, and just celebrate all the things that Superman is right now. That's kind of what's happening now. Like with Action 1050, and really properly with me, Action 1051, it's kind of a reset that where new readers can jump on the book and not have to have read Warworld and just see this bright gleaming Metropolis with a rogue that they recognize, with the super family all being what they are now. It's a celebration of Superman and Metropolis and all those things. Like we're starting to see Metropolis become the city of tomorrow and all that stuff without having to deal with any of the Warworld threads. So yeah, it's not Zod's time yet. When we do come up against Zod eventually, we'll deal with that the Chris Kent situation.
Okay. Anything else coming from the chat?
Somebody asked, how old is the rest of Super family? Kara, Keenan, Connor have been aging up. So how old are they all to you? What's the scale of age for the Super fam in your opinion?
Forgive me, I'd rather not answer. There is a reason for it that I shouldn't get into, but I will plead the fifth in this particular one.
No problem. That's perfectly fair. I knew we were going to run into one eventually, so don't worry.
Yeah.
If not, I can go to Twitter and have a look.
Some of these are very specific, so I feel like some of these are going to be no-goes because they're very, very specific. So
okay, I'm gonna head to Twitter and guess one from our friend. Okay, this is a good one. So Adam says on Twitter, how important is romance in a Superman run?
Given that he was on War for such a long time without his like core cast, I really wanted to kind of, again, like we're celebrating all the things Superman is, and the Lois and Clark relationship is such a huge part of that. So in this particular time and book, it is quite important, I think. I wanted to see, plus because I'm putting a lot of my own father-son stuff, my own like life into this book. I don't want Lois to ever become just John's mom. It's a love story between Clark and Lois, and I wanted to see that. So we introduced Sunrise Point, which is this place up 5,000 feet up, where Superman and Lois sometimes hang out, where they can see the whole city and the sky and the horizon behind it, and no one can see them. And it's a place where they go to have sex.
Have you? How's that? I repeated it.
See them as an actual I lost your audio again.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask.
Sorting that out.
Have you?
Oh, there it is.
Have you seen the memes people have made about your pages about that?
No, actually.
People have been memeing, like, I don't know if you see the Willem Dafoe face where he's like looking up like in horror, but people have been posting your pages with that of like when it's 4 a.m. in Metropolis and you hear Superman and Lois having sex in the sky again. Like it's just like the civilians in Metropolis, just like, here we go again. I didn't know if you've been made aware of that, but it's just like become a meme now because of you. Every time you have these scenes with them in the sky, I love it. I think it's hilarious. But it's become like that's been your impact now. Is all the Superman and Lois shippers are like they're having sex in the sky again.
Yeah, dude, that's my legacy in comics now. It's sky fucking.
You'd be so surprised though, because so many Superman fans are very much like, no, Superman, like wholesome relationship that never they suck all that out of it. So it's nice to see like a Superman that gets some again is a nice.
Yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, let Superman fuck again.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and if you had his powers, why wouldn't you in the sky? I mean, come on, grow up. There's going to be another scene like that in like 1051. I don't want to spoil what it is, but there's another nod to Superman and to the sexual health of their relationship. Again, 1051.
We love it. This is what we used to do. We need to get the agenda, because DC for years has been trying to say Batman's the sex symbol. No. Batman is terrible in bed. Superman's the lover of the DC universe. We're making it canon now.
Exactly.
How's the chat looking?
He's a thoughtful lover, but they also enjoy the sky.
There we go.
There we go. For that.
We have what's an underrated Superman power?
Underrated. Well, honestly, kind of the thing I was talking about, where he can use his electromagnetic field. I forget the official title, but to not only fly but also move things without, because when he actually, if he's catching a C-130, like gigantic plane, and he picks it up and lifts, saves it from a crash. Why doesn't he just crumple the whole thing? Because it's like this. It's all the weight is on this tiny little spot. So it's technically he would be extending his biomagnetic field or whatever over the plane to lift it. We're going to start exploring that in more creative ways. Aside from that. We kind of saw in the One Who Fell arc, we saw his various like vision-based powers, and I kind of wanted to, like vision-based powers, but also various kinds of heat vision that he can do. We haven't explored that much. That was one way I was trying to. That arc, the whole point of that arc was to set up John as a worthy Superman of Earth before Clark left. And one of the ways that we kind of gave John the edge is that he had more control over the nuance of his eye beams. Like he was able to find, he was able to use his eye powers in more creative ways to like create these little explosions in midair, or to hit this big thing with something that's not just heat vision. There's a different kind of radiation. I'd like to explore that a little more too.
Well, sounds really exciting. I hope, for John specifically, I hope more people lean into that in future, because I think that I remember that setup you did, and it's something that's kind of been left like hanging in the air. It's like it would be a good way of just visually showing John as different from Clark in like how he approaches things by giving him like still the same power set but different mentality, different approach, and different use of that.
I intend to. I mean, I'm not like John's keeper right now, but I do want to explore the. Kind of, how different athletes on a team will all have different strengths, and I want to kind of remind everyone like John's the vision guy, like he can do crazy shit with his eyes. So next time we need something like that, John's the guy. I kind of want to see John explore that in the book.
That's a really cool idea.
I think people forget too in general that Superman's sensitivity levels were so bad when he first got to Earth. I think people just kind of like conveniently forget that he's sensitive to everything visually and like senses wise by comparison. I think John's kind of more accustomed to it, so he's probably going to be better at the actual application than even his dad's going to be, because his dad had years and years and years of training himself to not be as sensitive and know what to block out, whereas John has the half human, half Kryptonian portion where he's able to kind of mentally shift and censor out and kind of hone in a less painful way than probably Clark has to deal with it.
Yeah, Clark's got like the sensory overload, and then like someone like you could take the floor.
The old cliche of like we stand on the shoulders of giants, you know, and that can be applied to so many things, all kinds of creative pursuits. But I kind of wanted to see that in John's case as well, like different ways in which, like, Superman's still the ultimate, in my mind, especially after World, he is still the ultimate power in the multiverse. He has this unrivaled sheer power, you know, capital P. But John has these additional nuances or tricks that he's learned from, you know, growing up with it from you know, very beginning, and knowing he's Superman's son and seeing how his dad does stuff, and just kind of learning greater control that his dad might not have yet.
That's all good. Anything else?
Somebody asked, how much does continuity affect how you write? Like, if there's something you want to write, but it might go against canon, how much do you push against it or try to go around it? Because I know DC continuity is a mess and a half, and it gives me a headache to read it sometimes. I forget what happened when, so...
Honestly, New 52 and Rebirth kind of gave us a blank slate in a way. If it's stuff that came before all that, it makes it much more convenient to work around. Like, if there's something that I like strongly disagree with, I can just kind of not deal with it. Like, okay, for one thing, people ask me about, like, hey, when are you going to walk back the secret identity? Or how come we haven't seen you deal with the secret identity in the books? And part of that is that if it is ever turned around, I don't want the book to be dated, because that's such a huge part of the books. I don't want to date the book as like, oh yeah, that was that crazy time in the, you know, early 21st century when Superman was no longer Clark Kent. I want the book to always be applicable, to be kind of this evergreen thing. So I have been hesitant to really bring up the secret identity that much. Other stuff, like, God, what's another thing? If there's something, if something has been happening very recently, like post-Rebirth, I do try to stick to it, because I don't want to break the book for anyone. That was one of the things where, you know, I hate to even say it out loud, but the whole John age-up thing, people are like, just turn it around, make him young. And I felt like that was disrespectful, not just to Bendis and to DC continuity, but to the readers who, like, hey, all this shit you've been reading all up till now, none of this counts anymore, and it's all made up, and here's a magic wand, we're just going to change it. It just made it feel like nothing mattered. And instead, I wanted to kind of carry it forward. So there were aspects of the Tomasi and Jurgen's time of Superman as a father that I really wanted to see again, as the father of a young kid. And so we kind of took our time getting back to it, and now we have Superman with the Super Twins. And we're going to recapture that same kind of energy and the same kind of stories that we had with young John. But we also couldn't break the stories with John, because those things mattered. We saw John go through a lot in Legion and as a teenager. And of course, obviously, in Son of Kal-El. It mattered for a ton of reasons I don't have time to get into right now, why we couldn't just spin it around and just do whatever we want to. So I do, if it's stuff that happened since Rebirth, I do try to honor it and make sure we don't break anything, because I want these stories to feel real and lived in, and I want readers to feel like the stories that they're reading count.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I'm going to do a quick check on Twitter to see...
I have one too while you're doing that. It's the last one I have from the chat here.
Go ahead.
Will the Authority continue to have a role in your run?
I want the Authority to have life beyond the Superman books. I think the Authority has the potential to be this tentpole book at DC for specifically for the purpose of diversity. I think people who are looking for themselves in a book could really hang on to the Authority the way that they hang on to the X books at Marvel. I think that the Authority, as defined by Grant Morrison in recent years, has potential to have that same power to, for people. So I would like to see. I am going to be using the Authority to some degree. I mean, the focus is going to be the super family cast right now, but I hope to continue to use some of those characters. But I really want them to have a life beyond this. I want this to be. I want the Morrison run and then Warworld Saga to kind of be the launch pad for what the Authority could become. And I'd love to be involved with it, but I think that we need like real voices of diversity that those readers want to see on a book like that. So that's my hope for the Authority. I think the Authority can be really important going forward. You just got to find the right team and the right story for it.
Okay. The one from Twitter I pulled, and this is kind of relevant to what you're talking about with recapturing that element of Kid John. How is the dynamic and relationship between Clark and the twins going to be different than what we've seen with how he interacted with John? Because you said it's like recapturing the energy, but like what is going to make it stand out with these kids as compared to John as a kid? Like what makes them different?
Well, Superman is still mindful that these are not his, excuse me, these are not his children, and they have had a bit of a life on Warworld without them, and he's trying to be, they come from a different culture, and a lot of that culture was in the form of propaganda and hero worship and really hateful, destructive, the worship of Mongol and the worship of the chains that they were in, and the deference to the Warzone as opposed to what the trash that they were considered to be. All these things that are, not valid. He's trying to help them get past all that, get past all the violence they saw and did on there. So he's trying to be mindful of what they came from and respect aspects of their culture while helping to heal some of the more destructive aspects of that culture that they dealt with in the war world. So it's a more touchy situation. But he's also really reveling in the role of father figure and teacher and mentor, and like showing them, all the beauty of Earth, all the good things here, and helping them navigate also the some of the persecution that's going to come, because these are refugees from an alien planet, and not everyone here on Earth wants to welcome them here. As we've seen in the wake of Afghanistan, but also the wake of Ukraine, what's happening now, not everyone is friendly to refugees, and they're going to see some of that. So he's helping them navigate some of the problems here, but also showing them the good things and show them that this world is worth saving. But he's also mindful that they're not his children.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else popping up from there?
Somebody asked, when will the Revenant Queen appear in Action Comics?
Man, that's a good question. The Revenant Queen might not appear ... in Action Comics.
Okay, you got your answer without having the answer.
Yeah,
so.
I guess just keep an eye out for solicits, folks.
Stay tuned, folks. Yeah.
Anything else from in chat?
I think that's mostly it. I try to get everybody's questions, or at least a question that they asked. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything from chat. Do you have anything that you...
Yeah, there's a thing from my friend Whoop as well, where he asks, what is a tip for when you're writing the voice of Superman to keep in mind to make sure it sounds like Superman's voice and not another character's voice?
I want every... Somebody once told me that they had a thing that they tried to work into every Superman issue, where Superman, in every issue, Superman has to save someone and be smiling while he does it. I think that was the thing that had to be in every Superman issue. Those are good things. That's not one of my like commandments of a Superman issue. But one commandment that I do have for every Superman issue is that there has to be a moment in which he says something really inspirational and uplifting, and something like very quotable that kind of sums up everything that Superman is. I try to put something like that in every single issue. One that people really grabbed onto, and that I see shared from time to time, is the one from Action 1038, I believe. He's in the dungeon, and Midnighter. This is after Superman and his team have lost, and Midnighter is in there busting him out. And he's like, "Come on, let's get out of here. We're gonna get back home." And he's like, "I'm not going anywhere." And they go back and forth for a bit. He's like, "All we got to do is blow up the Star Forges, and we can get your powers back, and it's going to be okay." And he's like, "No, you can't do that. It'll kill 1,000 people." And he's like, "What is your problem? Do you think you won this thing?" We just got our asses kicked. Like everyone you came here to save cheered as we got our asses kicked. So and so's dead. This person's dead. Do these people's lives matter more than us? Like, we came here with you to help you do this. We gave up everything for you, and you're sticking us here for them, and they all hate us. Like, do our lives matter? Do their lives matter more to you than ours? And he said, "No, not more, but not less." And that was something that everyone really grabbed onto. And I thought it was going to be a different line, actually, in that issue. There was no line in that same issue in which he said, let's see, in that same argument, he's like, "We just got our asses kicked." Superman's like, "Should we then? Should we?" Or no, sorry, he's talking about how everyone else cheered as they got beat up and killed. And he's like, "What should we do then? Abandon the ones who don't cheer for us? Stay down every time we get knocked down? Is that what our heroes taught us?" That's the moment that I hoped people would grab onto, but it was the other one, which actually is great. Like, the other line, I'm glad that people took that from that too. I try to put a line like that in every single book. And I saw a question on Twitter also. I'm not sure if this is the same question that you're pulling from, but somebody asked me like, what I turn to find the voice of Clark.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And is that the same question that you were thinking?
Yeah, that's the same question. But you can go into that as well, because that's a very in-depth topic. So continue what you want to say.
Well, Christopher, I mean, if you're talking Superman, like sources of Superman lit, Christopher Reeve's take first and foremost. I really love that take. I know it's not a comic book, but I just love that voice for Superman. Those movies are not perfect, but his depiction of Superman, for me, is. He's only ever afraid when someone else is in danger. He has this way of talking that's so virtuous and simple. Like, he doesn't, simple and virtuous in a way that's almost corny, but not quite corny. And then I have to remind myself that it only sounds corny to me because I'm lame, not him.
And it's one of those.
If I listen to Superman's, sorry, go ahead.
No, it's like the thing you mentioned there is like Morrison on the Substat blog had a thing where like he kind of sounds like he's from an older world, like he's from an older time, where he's a little bit more virtuous, a little bit more friendly, but not our time, but like the idea of an older warrior figure. So I think that's kind of what you were going for as well. Is Reeve has that element to him.
Like when I write Captain America, I do have Captain America sound deliberately dated because he was the perfect American soldier from the 1930s and 40s, and he should sound a little hokey talking today, I think. Superman grew up in our time, but he just has this virtue, and he just sees people different than we do. I mean, I see people that I admire, people I want to succeed, some people that I judge to be bad, and I want to see fail. I see people like, this guy's a dick, and I hope he doesn't succeed in this thing he's trying to do. Superman reminds me that he does not see bad people. He might see an angry person or sad or lost or confused, but he mostly sees people who need help. He just he sees the world in much more virtuous terms than I do, and it makes me try to see the world that way too. So I guess if I was going to give that guy, I know this is a super long answer, but if I gave one tip, I guess it would be that to try to see the world in those terms, try to see the world as a person who loves everybody and is not above a dust up. Like he's not afraid to fight when it comes down to it, but not because he hates anyone. You know. So as far as who I voices I try to draw on to write Superman, I mean I could name Superman runs. I mean like All Star Superman, but that's not so much the voice as the depiction. I don't know. It's more than that. But yeah, the voice obviously Grant writes a great voice in All Star. Superman for All Seasons, specific key moments from Kingdom Come. Superman Secret Origins is good, but really it's not Superman that I listen to or read when I'm trying to find Superman's voice. It's I find like Pulitzer Prize winning journalism from the New York Times or from like Nicole Hannah Jones, who has written stuff for the New York Times. She's the creator of the 1619 Project, and she's written some very powerful stuff at the Times. Robert Greene of the LA Times is a journalist I admire. I read To Kill a Mockingbird and find key moments spoken by Atticus Finch.
I was about to say Atticus Finch is a very common one. I think a lot of people, I've seen that on Twitter, that Gregory Peck should have played Superman back in when he was popular. A lot of people say that.
He basically did, right? I mean, like with that depiction, there's this great line, I'm getting it wrong. Just because we were licked 100 years ago, sorry. Just because we were licked 100 years before we started, there's no reason not to try to win.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that just encompasses who Superman is. Like we lost before we even set foot in the arena, but that's no reason not to try to win. Not to win, actually, is what Superman. Like we're gonna win this anyway. Like I'm not, John. Before he set off to War, John told him like I've seen the future. I was with the Legion in the 31st century, and it gets in the whole history books. You die on this trip, and Superman won't hear it. He was like, we fight fate all the time. It's just, don't worry, I'm going to come back. I'm always going to come back. We're going to get this done. So yeah, stuff like that is actually what I listen to, or like speeches of Martin Luther King, or the speeches of FDR, or these really meaningful things, or like really great, powerful journalism like Clark Kent would write. Feature pieces about injustice or about people that we should admire. Those are the kind of things I write when I'm trying to write Superman.
So one of those things that I know you said previously, you're not going to avoid the secret identity thing. He still does work for the Daily Planet. I kind of, now you say it, I kind of want to see you write like a Clark Kent journalism piece now, because I think you do it really good. Like you've got all these things. Like I know you don't want to overplay, but like maybe just throw one in an issue somewhere like that, because I think you'd have a really interesting take on it. Because a lot of people don't go to other journalists for Clark. I think that's a really interesting perspective, and it'd be a shame if we don't ever get to see that. You don't have to, but I'm just saying, like, you kind of sound like me want to hear that now.
A lot of my favorite comics are written. Some people say they don't like captions. They want the only words on the page should be spoken dialogue. I completely disagree with that. I think that captions can be done really artfully, and especially when it kind of when it's, let's see, what should I say? Like when it's kind of illustrating something behind the text, like subtext can be super powerful. And if you write captions that you at first don't understand the relationship to the art, and then later all kind of comes together, I really like those moments. They can also very effectively kind of sum up the theme of what the story is about in a way that kind of comes together later. Scott Snyder is a master of that. The very first issue of his New 52 Batman run, Court of Owls, he talks about the Gotham Is column in the Gotham Gazette, I think, and how people will say Gotham is, Batman. Gotham is despair. Gotham is whatever. Gotham is one of his villains, and he kind of comes. That's the theme that the whole issue kind of spins out of, like the first phrase of a jazz solo, and it kind of everything kind of builds on that idea, like what is Gotham, and because Batman thinks he understands Gotham better than anyone. He knows Gotham like the back of his hand. He knows the city. He knows what's there, what's not there. And then at the end of that first issue, it kind of makes the statement that Gotham is still a mystery, even to him. Like there's things there that even he doesn't know about. That was such an elegant way to write that issue. And that's a lesson I try to learn. So the reason I'm talking about all that is I'm going to be doing that in the action run beginning in Action 1051. I'm going to be using, op-eds or feature stories from the Daily Planet as written by Clark or by Lois or by whoever to kind of illustrate what the stories are about, because they are journalists and that's at their core who they are. So I'm going to use pieces that they write. I'm going to be writing, full pieces of journalism and using excerpts from those pieces in the comics to kind of flesh out the idea of the Daily Planet, but also to show in a more meaningful way who Lois and Clark are. We kind of did that in the World Rising arc as well. It started out with a segment that Lois was writing about, a book that Lois was writing about Krypton. You see some of her writing from that book in the World Rising. I think it was actually 1030. But we're going to be seeing their journalism works going forward.
That's fantastic. I'm very excited to see that then. Shall we do then last 3 questions and then call it a night?
Sure. Luis says, is there any character you'd love to write that you haven't gotten to? Like any DC, Marvel, whatever, any character that you're really chomping at the bit to write?
Yeah, I'm about to start a new series, and it's going to be getting announced very soon.
Yeah,
sadly, I cannot say who it is yet, but I'm just busting to tell you. But yeah, it's a story that, it's a character that has a lot of room there's a lot of room for these big, like, meaningful, deep dive kind of takes that are not always done that way, and I'm like, fucking can't wait to do it. But that character aside, since I can't talk about it, I'd love to write Hellblazer. I love Hellblazer deeply. There's a book with Hellblazer. There's a story that I have in me with Hellblazer and Deadman that I'm dying to do. So hopefully soon. I also really love Spectre. I think it'd be really fun to do a Hellblazer Doctor Strange team up book.
That'd be super cool. That'd be super cool.
That would be really fun. I understand that would be a hard sell because they're like opposites in a lot of ways. But anyway, those are some of them. I also have like a kind of a fun Plastic Man like comedy thing that I would love to do, and not like in a dopey comedy, but in a fun. I don't know. It's not my usual thing, but I have a.
It's good to stretch like that, though. I mean, literally. I didn't even mean to put Plastic Man.
Hey.
All right. Well, any other one from that?
Yeah, it's kind of a send up of a comic-y trope. Lore through a Plastic Man story.
I'll ask one that's on kind of my agenda.
Okay.
A lot of stories like to do like super creatures, Kryptonian creatures, space creatures, and they like to do like the Sun Eater, or there's Herco and like the old Superman comics. So as far as Superman goes, do you think like the space pets that he sometimes gets, not like the Kryptos and the Streakies, but like the actual like monsters that he like ends up with, is it fun or hokey? Or do you have any plans to bring any of them back, or how do you feel about the space flora and fauna that he collects sometimes?
I think it's awesome. I think it really shows who he is. I mean, in a way, Warworld was kind of like the opposite of that, like the dark, twisted mirror version of that, where he's, Superman is finding these things that would not survive on their own, and at least in my headcanon, at least he's collecting things that would otherwise die and bringing them back to the fortress to survive and to be, studied and celebrated and remembered. Whereas Warworld was this, they're going out and wiping out entire species and collecting the remnants as slaves, and that becomes like this preserve of conquered people. I think, yeah, I think the way Superman does it is beautiful, and I would love to see more of that. I have not actually been thinking much about it, but I should have been, and now I am, thanks to you. So I'm going to try to work something.
There we go. If specifically, there's a Silver Age one called Harko that she's in love with. Who got sent to the Phantom Zone, and because of death metal, you can pull from Silver Age stuff. So if you have a little Phantom Zone thing, and you can find a way to just put in Harko, like maybe Google it if you want to see it. It's got a really dopey looking design, but it's amazing. She's like the most obsessed with it. Then we'll remember this. So I'll thank you deeply from the bottom of my heart if you can find a way to put Harko, the monster that was in love with Lois, in the Superman story.
All right, I'll do my best. There's a lot of stuff from the Silver Age that's not going to make it in, but
obviously, yeah. I mean, there's some stuff we know, but Harko could stay. What else is the chat looking like?
I think just people sharing what they like and dislike for the most part.
Okay.
Any last questions from anybody in the chat? This is probably our last one. So
yeah.
Any last stuff out there for anybody?
Make it a good one, and we'll think. I'll see if do I have a question just to hold us off until then, and then we can do the final audience one. I guess just with outside of the comics, because you've kind of got that unlock. We've got a whole new wave, got a new Superman #1 coming out. You're doing this whole new thing. It's looking good for Superman comics lately. In other media, movies, TV shows, animation, what do you want to see from Superman as like a fan for you? What do you want to see in like the next 10 years? Because they just brought Henry Cavill back and stuff like that. Where would you want to see that go for Superman?
Well, I mean, I'm excited to see Henry Cavill come back, and given all the criticism and picking everything apart and like what worked and didn't work and everything of all the Snyder films, I'm hopeful for the next Cavill movie to be really awesome. Because I mean, the arc is complete. Like people were saying, I think the way they defended Superman's murder of Zod and Man of Steel, like that's he was forced to kill the last survivor of his planet and just crushed him, and he swore he'll never kill again and all that. When you see his fight with Batman, and then by the time that his story in Justice League was done, Superman is this paragon of virtue that many fans wanted to see the whole time. So I believe that the next Henry Cavill story will be more of this story of like Superman, the way that he kind of ought to be. I know there's a lot of I know there's a ton of fans of the Snyder films here. At some point, I remember somebody kind of bemoaning the fact that they couldn't take their kid to see the Superman movie because he was so dark and scary in it or something. And I don't think that's going to be the case with whatever comes next. I think the next one's going to be like a proper uplifting Superman film, and I'm looking forward to that very much. I kind of want to see a Superman video game.
Yeah, big time.
I think that, post Injustice, post all the Arkham games, I think there's a way to do a really kick-ass Superman game. And,
you're a bit of
maybe Suicide Squad would be the first step for that.
You're a bit of a gamer yourself in terms of like playing stuff like I don't know how much into like the weeds of it you are, but do you have a specific developer that you'd like to see use Superman? Because I know you played like the From Software games, you've played like God of War and stuff like that. Like what developer would you like to see take Superman if you've got any on top of your head?
I mean, Rocksteady has my complete faith with everything. I mean, now that's the easy choice, but the way that they've treated the Arkham games is just incredible. I mean, anyone else who has tried a Batman game with massive resources, nobody can quite nail it the way that Rocksteady has. It's just so fucking good. So I mean, Sony Santa Monica, obviously the God of War games, I mean, is incredible. Naughty Dog can do no wrong for me. But I think as far as people who have done games like what I would want to see from Superman, I got to say Rocksteady and Sony Santa Monica, based on what we've seen from them already.
Okay, I think the one of the people behind in Sony Santa Monica actually gave like a pitch for what they'd want to do for a Superman game, so that might be a possibility. But they see that they had the hands full at the moment with God of War, but I'd be down for that if they can put that polished.
Saga. I mean, World Saga. I want to play World Saga on PS5.
That'd be so good. That'd be so good. Okay, has chat managed to get anything from there?
There was a Powerball question, but I want to disregard that. Okay. Anything you have on top of your head? Anything else that you want to?
I don't know. I want to let the audience get this one. Let me look on Twitter, see if there's anything there. I don't want to hog everyone's time. Okay, this will. So you've been using the cosmic side of stuff. Someone asks, any plans for Maxima and her kingdom of Almerac, or the Insect Queen, like female cosmic Superman villains?
Maxima's fucking dope, and I would love to use her. There's not any immediate plans, but she's awesome though, and I would not be opposed to that at all. Yeah, I've got a lot of other stuff coming up, and I feel like we've spent so much time in space lately. I feel like we need to kind of hang out in Metropolis for a bit. Not that there's any reason why she couldn't come to us, but no immediate plans. But I do like that idea a lot. So stay tuned. We'll see.
Okay. And there's still nothing from chat on that?
Yep, I think we're about wrapped up then on our chat end.
All right. Do you have any final questions?
Talked about Lex. Talked about Zaw a little bit. Talked about the super pets. I was gonna say something about Maxima or like some other of the female villains, but I liked your answer enough, so let's leave it at that. If you use Maxima, I'll be very, very happy. I think she's a lot of fun and she like never gets used. So yeah, I think that's it for me, at least for this one. So
all right, how about you, PK? Do you have any questions for us?
No, it's great. I mean, Aaron, it's great to meet you finally. And
yeah, you too.
It was good to see you, Alfie.
Always. So yeah, that wraps us up for this time, folks. Thank you all so much for everyone who answered the questions. If you just stayed and watched the stream, if you're watching the VOD of this, which will be up once the stream's finished, like automatically onto YouTube, so don't worry about that. Thank you for everyone for coming on, and hopefully we can try and make this something that a couple months or whatever's like a big like period between your run, because again we want your run to go on for a long time. We can try and do these regular meetups and get the Superman community involved in a big way as celebrating this run and really getting everyone involved. So thank you as always, Philip, for coming on and doing this with our channel, despite it being not really as big as some other ones. It always really means a lot for you to be so supportive for us. And yeah, that's about it, folks. Thank you all for watching. Make sure to buy Action Comics 1049, which should be coming out pretty soon, I believe.
And comes out soon. And Alien and 007 and some more stuff coming out soon.
Exactly that. And I will be having a follow-up, not live stream, but recorded interview with PKJ about his non-Superman work. So look forward to that as well. If you want to talk about some of the things where that secret mystery project that he can't talk about might get some more details in it at a later date. So thank you all for watching, and as always,